everyone. My name is Michael Calandra. I'm the owner and chief instructor at Seishinkan West in Wittmann, Arizona, and welcome to the first episode of The Martial Truth. In today's episode, we're going to talk about and ask a simple question. Who are we training to fight? In other words, in martial arts, we also often hear that the instructor says, well, we're doing it for self-defense, and we're training for self-defense. And other schools come right out and say, well, we train for tournaments. Our primary focus is sport martial arts and tournaments, okay? And the question is, especially in a lot of karate schools, of which I've been training in Isshin-Ryu karate for almost 45 years, how are they attacking? Who are we training to fight? So if we're training to fight someone who's going to attack us in a parking lot or in a dark alley, right? What attacks do they use? And how do they use them? How do they attack? What are their common attacks? But when I go into most karate schools and I see most karate people training, I see them defending against other karate style punches. So most of the schools I've seen, they're working against karate style punches. If you start looking at some other martial arts, you'll say schools like in Aikido, they come in with, the edge of the hand attack a lot. And, before I became the owner of I've been an owner of a martial arts school for literally 40 years. I was also a member of the New York City Transit Police, and then later on the NYPD for 22 years. I worked in East New York, Brooklyn, in the highest felony crime district in the transit police for 17 years. Even after the NYPD, even after the two departments merged, I stayed in transit. I did a lot of plainclothes work. And my final 5.5 years with the NYPD, I was in the Dignitary Protection Unit, which is basically doing exactly what the Secret Service does. Many people don't know that the NYPD does more dignitary protection than any other law enforcement agency in the world. So I did that for my last 5.5 years in the intelligence division at the NYPD. I'm also a certified FBI defensive tactics instructor and a graduate of the FBI Officer Survival School, although with the current state of the FBI, I don't even know if I should mention that, okay? The FBI is not what it once was. So, getting back to our initial topic, who are we training to fight? So, when I'm teaching my students, we sometimes train against karate style attacks. And when I'm teaching that, I'm more or less saying to the student, well, this is more for fun or just to do something a little different. We're mostly training against punches the way someone in a parking lot will punch at you. So, with the advent of MMA and a lot of people watching MMA, you'll see a lot of people will throw a better punch. So they may throw a straighter punch, similar like a boxing cross, right, or a boxing hook, and also a big haymaker. The number one attack in the world is someone attempting to strike you in the face. So, in my opinion, that's something you should work on a lot in your dojo if you're claiming to teach for self-defense. If the punches you're working against are karate-style punches where you're starting from chamber all the time or whatever, not good. Because again, the way you train is the way you're going to fight. So if you never work against those punches, it'll be a big surprise to you or your students when the person attacks in a way that you never train against. Okay, so we do some drills in my school, which you can see on one of my YouTube videos that I shot while in London, where we do some close-in things where we do start with punching from the hip. That's to develop reflexes. And the student is expected to move in, not back up. I don't really teach techniques where I back up. Everything I do is in. If you look at the kata, you will see that 98% of the time we're stepping in. Almost all the martial arts I do, and I do several, you are almost always stepping in. So in a self-defense situation, especially in modern karate classes, I see a lot of stepping backwards. In the first dojo I was in, that was taught all the time. Person throws a punch, you step back and block, and you counter. And again, what kind of punch was it? It was an Isshinryu punch, vertical fist punch, the way we punch in Isshinryu karate, and not how someone attacks in the street. And then on a rare occasion, and what my first instructor referred to as practicing self-defense, we'd sometimes work against the haymaker or the punch from a more, hands-up, street-style type of position, okay? So the question is, if we're training to fight for self-defense, well, then we have to know how the people we're going to fight attack. And it's very easy. You can go on YouTube and you can see numerous videos of people really fighting and see how they punch and see how they attack. And you need to understand your area, and this could be worldwide, right? So like when I was in London, a lot of the teenagers were telling me that one of the ways they get grabbed all the time is in headlocks. And frankly, that's not something we see here as much in the United States anymore. So I spent some time going over how to defend against headlocks with them. And in my dojo, I cover all kinds of techniques, okay? Every type of grab you can think of. We do ground fighting. We're not doing ground fighting, though, where we're wrestling around and doing grappling with guy on the floor. Our goal is to take him out and get back up. We're always assuming there's more than one opponent and not just one-on-one fighting. So if you're teaching self-defense, you have to always assume there'll be an opponent number two, and hopefully there isn't. Hopefully it is just the one-on-one, which makes things a lot easier. But you have to assume there will be more than one opponent, okay? So if you're working on self-defense, the bulk of your self-defense training should be against a punch. And obviously you can work all kinds of different techniques. I mean, the techniques, that's up to you, right? But again, you want to investigate things and understand that these techniques should be effective, okay? Again, you want to work where you're moving in and closing with the opponent, okay? I can tell you from numerous life and death situations on the streets of New York for a long time that most people, when they punch in the street, are expecting you to back up. And the thing you need to realize is most criminals who I train my students to fight, I'm not training my students to fight a Shotokan karate guy or an MMA guy or an Aikido guy or a Jiu-Jitsu guy, because frankly, last time I checked, martial artists are supposed to be the good guy. So the guy I'm training my students to fight against is the predator in the street. And don't for a second think that the predator in the street isn't as dangerous or more dangerous than most of your martial artists walking around out there. And here's the difference. The predator on the street becomes extremely used to violence. So whereas martial artists in general, most of us tend to be on the good side, although we have our exceptions in martial arts too, right? So we might hesitate, right? Especially if you haven't been exposed to a lot of violence. We may hesitate. The criminal doesn't hesitate. He's used violence. He likes violence. It gives him a sense of power, and he won't hesitate to attack you. If you train where you're backing up all the time, you may block the first punch, but in blocking that first punch, that second punch is coming right away. Okay, so this idea, like I see in a lot of karate schools where it's block punch, that is never going to happen in a real combat situation. As soon as that person feels your arm block their arm, that second punch is being fired. And if you're going backwards, now you're on your heels, and that person is going to steamroll you. So what you want to do is you want to move in, okay, and you want to work against the types of punches that these criminals are actually going to throw against you. One of the things I found, being in so many real experiences and real fighting, is that the criminal expects you to move back. That's what's happened virtually every single time he's attacked someone. Now here, the properly trained person moves in. When you move in, that sends a message to the criminal's brain, uh-oh. And the criminal will actually, in the middle of his punch, a lot of times will start to move back as you move in. Because again, his reptilian brain is telling him, uh-oh, this is dangerous, let's get out of here. And the criminal's not a trained fighter. The criminal is going on pure instinct. What's worked for him? Now, he might be very good at that, though. Okay? He might be very good at it. All right? So, in moving in, you throw off his rhythm. The thing is, once you move in and you seize the initiative, you have to eliminate the threat. So, and remember, this is a real situation. You know, this is a situation where you're walking with your kids or your wife. You're in a parking lot, and maybe one or two guys come up to you and decide they want to, take what you own from you, and you've decided that you're not going to do that. Or someone just comes up to you, some random person just decides that they're going to commit an act of violence upon you. Why? Well, because they feel like it. Okay, and now it's up to you to be able to counter that act of random violence. So if you're spending 95% of the time in your martial arts school and you're practicing against, a guy coming at you with a edge of the hand or a nice karate twist punch, right? That is not going to prepare you for the type of attack you're going to experience out there. It's going to be a rude awakening for you. I couldn't tell you how many cops I worked with that came to me after they got on the police department and said to me, I studied this martial art, I studied that martial art, and when I try to use it out here, it's just not working. And then when I asked them what they studied and I asked them how they trained, I had to break the news to them that they were not doing martial arts. They were either doing a martial sport or they were training in a way that was not preparing them for actual combat, okay? Which includes all different types of attacks. So another common attack, a push. Another common attack is someone wrapping your arms up, either from the front or the rear. Another common attack is a rear choke. These are all very common attacks, right? And again, you should work against every conceivable type of attack you can think of within the realm of reason, and not start looking at things that are in the realm of fantasy, okay? So I think it's important, right, that karate especially almost needs an intervention, right? On Okinawa right now, karate has become all about the tournament. And if that's what you want karate for, that's fine. But if you want karate to work for you in a real situation, well, then you have to train and practice in a way where the training will kick in and work in that real situation, okay? You have to look and observe, right? And you have to understand how people attack for real, okay? In the hundreds of fights I had as a New York City Transit police officer, no one ever threw a karate style punch at me, okay? As a matter of fact, I can tell you, I only remember in hundreds of situations where people attacked me, I only remember people throwing kicks at me twice. And they weren't a karate kick. They were just like a soccer style trying to kick me in the groin kick, okay? So again, if you're spending, a lot of time in the dojo defending against kicks, again, are you going to face a kick that much? Now, am I saying you should never train to maybe understand how an MMA guy fights? And if you come up against a guy who's gone bad and he has some MMA training, absolutely you should train against that. Am I saying you should never train against a guy who throws a karate style punch? I'm absolutely not saying that. Am I saying you should never train against a guy who knows grappling and different things? Absolutely, I'm not saying that. But what I'm saying is the chances of you coming against those guys are slim and none. The chances of you coming up against the predator, the people that prey on society and try to remove your property from you and hurt you or possibly your loved ones, that's if you're training for self-defense, that's who you should be training for. So Choki Motobu was a very famous karate master on Okinawa who happened to defeat a strongman / boxer in a ring when he was much older, 52, in Japan, and I believe it was 1921. And, years later, he was asked, by a reporter, how would you fight a boxer? And his response was, I'd make sure I knew how to box. So again, can you come up against a boxer? I've come up against a couple of boxers, criminals that had fought boxing matches in prison and one that had been a professional boxer. Again, boxing operates within a framework of rules. So understand those rules, understand the habits of boxers, and know how to take advantage of that as a martial artist. So do I ever say to my student, okay, tonight we're going to work against the jab and we're going to work against the right cross, or we're going to work against the hook? Absolutely. And I explain to him, if you come up against a boxer, see the way he holds his hands, look at it, get an idea, okay? And there's ways to, again, deal with that. But you have to figure out those ways, okay? So the other thing is if you're training for self-defense, at some point you have to start working against very fast punches. So the punch has to be thrown by your opponent. It has to be thrown hard and with intent. And you have to develop the confidence where you can move and move inside it, move forward, redirect it, and eliminate the threat. If you're always working against slower speed, half speed, if the person's throwing the punches at you and they're throwing them to the outside of your head because God forbid you get hit, you're not training for self-defense. So you have to work. It has to become a little bit more realistic within specific guidelines to keep it still safe. Okay, most people that come to my school are not interested in being professional fighters. Many of them throughout the years have real jobs. Okay, so they're not interested in getting hurt. We don't allow contact in the school. We train with no contact. On occasion, someone slips and someone gets hit, and whatever. That's going to happen. This is martial arts. We're not doing ballet. On the same token, though, when you initially start with some beginner, the training method should not be full speed. You slow it down. Then as they become more confident, I like to say to my students, you turn up the heat. So the person initially is having a hard time, then all of a sudden, okay, they're starting to get it. Okay, let's turn it up. Let's go a little harder, a little faster. Now they're having a hard time again. Now all of a sudden, okay, they're starting to get it. Very good, good. Now we turn it up again. We turn it up until they feel so confident in dealing with a full speed punch that it doesn't become a shock to them anymore. Because I do a simple drill in my school, which I'll mention. I have two people stand facing each other and very close, and I have the one person try to touch the other person's cheek in front of them as fast as they can. And the other person's goal is to not allow that person to touch their cheek. And they can move their head, they can parry, they can block, they can do whatever they want. And initially, when that drill is first done, the person's getting their cheek touched virtually every single time by their opponent. That's how fast the punch comes at you. So you have to train against the types of attacks that the predators are going to use against you. And again, if you want to train against MMA, that's okay. If you want to train only against karate-style punches, that's okay. If you want to spend a lot of time grappling and that kind of stuff, okay. But real world, that's not the case. That's not how people are attacking you. You're not going to be rolling around on the floor with someone. Does that happen on occasion? Yeah, but if you train properly, your goal is to put the enemy on the floor, not you and the enemy. So you want the enemy down there, okay? Where again, you eliminate the threat that he's posing against you, okay? So I initially wanted to start these little video, you can call them podcasts, whatever, just because, again, I've been training a long time. I see certain things going on in the martial arts that I'm not necessarily a big fan of. Other people, I think there's some people out there that agree with me. And I see just the traditional martial arts, especially, I see them kind of getting away with further and further away from what their original intention was, which was to be able to be effective in self-defense. So the traditional martial arts, in my opinion, are the most real martial arts, okay? So I train in Isshinryu Karate, Sosui Shitsuru Jiu-Jitsu, which prior to the 1950s Prior to the Meiji restoration in Japan, it was only taught to samurai. So it was only taught to warriors. Shindo Musuru Jodo, which is also a samurai art. Katori Shinto-Ryu, which is also a samurai art. So these arts are all, it's about killing the enemy, okay? The original intention of karate, okay? And when I say the original intention, I'm talking about pre-militaristic buildup in Japan. Karate was for self-defense. There's nothing about tournaments. If you read some of the early works on karate, they even say how it's impossible to practice sparring safely. It's very, very, very dangerous. We have people putting on these pads and sparring in karate schools. I've never been attacked by anybody that looks anything like a sparring match in a karate school. Again, if that's what you want to do, if that's what makes you happy, again, God bless you. This is America. You can do whatever you want. Don't kid yourself into thinking that skill set you're developing in sparring with this rubber gear on and stuff in a dojo is going to translate to an actual fight in the street. It might, but then again, it might not. So the idea is to work with no padding, no protective gear, and be able to literally evade and stop an attack against yourself. Even in my dojo here, especially now, I'm a little bit older, I'm 59, right? I have some teenagers, right? And initially when I tell them to punch me, I tell them, okay, hit me right here. And I don't move, and their fist magically goes off to the side of my head. And I jokingly say, well, that's, my magic force field, that's protecting me from you hitting me, right? And then the kid laughs and he goes, but I'm afraid I'm going to hit you. And my response is always, well, if you hit me, that's my problem. It's not your problem. So you have to come in and try to hit me right here. And then after a few more times, the kid starts really laying in and throwing a punch, and he sees I'm evading it, right? So again, the only way I'm able to do that is because I've been doing it that way for a very, 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 very long time. And I've also done it for real a lot. And there's no better experience than doing it for real. You can talk theory all you want. If you haven't experienced life and death, physical struggle against another human being or human beings, it's very difficult for you to understand what that experience is like. And most people, the first time they really are forced to defend themselves, where if they lose, they could lose their life. That experience usually changes them. It makes them realize. So, it's important, like I tell my students this, we train for that one time in our lives when we need it. But we need it. Like we need it to save us, a family member, or maybe someone else, right? So you want it to work. So the only way it'll work is if you train in a way that will prepare you for the types of situations you'll face out there. So, again, I'm not looking to knock anybody. I'm just looking to point out some facts and some things. I'll give you one example. One of my students was attacked one time in a Dick's Sporting Goods by 3 bikers. Okay? He easily handled the 3 bikers. Easily. And the next day he came in and he said to me, he says, Sensei, it was just like the multiple person fighting drill we do in the dojo. It was exactly like that. And I said, well, that's why I developed that drill, to make it so it would give you an idea of what it would be like fighting multiple opponents. And this way, when it happens, it's not such a shock. And your training kicks in, and no problem. And he said to me, while it was going on, he actually wasn't nervous. He said it was afterwards when he thought very briefly the police might arrest him. But it turned out everybody that was there all said that the bikers he had witnessed steal stuff, they saw that he saw that, so they decided to come over and rough him up. And when he took them out, the police came initially, so 2 of them were on the floor, right? And so right away, he looks like the bad guy. But once everybody said, no, he was online, with his son, getting ready to pay for whatever he was buying, and this guy came over and attacked him, and he defended himself. So obviously the the bad guys were arrested and he was good to go. So, but it made me feel good as an instructor that one of the drills that I had created for our students in the dojo helped prepare him for that situation. And, I couldn't tell you how many times I trained police officers and showed them something, and then a week later I'm getting a phone call and they're saying to me, oh, that technique you showed us, boy, I tried it. It worked great. I can't believe how it worked, And I said, well, the reason is I tried it a lot for real and discovered that it worked really well. And now I move it forward and teach other police officers so they can use it for real. And this, again, is the goal of the martial arts school that's looking to train for self-defense and not just train for sport. And again, I teach traditional arts. So, philosophy, fitness, health, the ancient weapons. I do all that. I think it's a lot of fun. So I don't think you should just be all about, fighting the opponent and destroying the opponent. I think you got to lighten up a little bit and have some fun, and that's okay. But who are you training to fight? Are you training to fight the guy in the dojo who always beats you in sparring and thinking, well, yeah, I'd be able to handle myself in the parking lot against 3 guys? Are you training to fight only the MMA guy? Right? Are you training in Aikido and you're only working against certain types of attacks with a cooperative opponent? And again, if that's what you're looking for, that's fine. I have no problem with it. But don't think that when it happens for real and a real attack is coming at you, that's going to translate to being able to work against that. So, if you like this video, please click the like, share, and subscribe button. I'll look forward to your comments below. If there's any topic you want me to cover, anything you want me to cover, I will have some news coming down the pike about some other things I'm going to be starting to work on. I will also be in Phoenix this month, teaching at a symposium put together by Noah Legal in a park in Phoenix, which you can look up on Facebook. Just look up Noah Legal and it'll come up. And if I can, I'll put a link to it in the description here. Again, if you have any questions, the comments are right there. Have a great day, and I hope this gives you some things to think about. Thanks. Take care.